So sometimes people call me with their car problems and I help them out with them. I will mostly work on big trucks, but why not? Especially on a Sunday when nobody else wants to come out and give them a hand. This is a 2013 Honda Accord. Battery is okay. Alternator is not putting out enough voltage, so it's not charging. The alternator is bad. I'll do a quick video on swapping out an alternator in this vehicle. This is a 2.4, I believe, Honda Accord. 2.3. What is this thing? Right there, 2.4. So, all right, we're gonna get this thing swapped out. Step one is disconnect your battery, which I just did, and I'm gonna start taking this stuff off. This is the alternator regulator control plug, so I'll pull that off when I get all this rest of this off, and you'll see what's going on. You got a 10mm right here on the top of the alternator. This is the bracket that brings the harness down for the alternator and the AC compressor. You got a 10mm right here, and there is another 10mm here, but actually you don't need to take that one off. You can, it's just easier. But the new alternator does come with that little other one on the bottom, so you will need to have to squeeze these little tabs right here, these purple ones, to pop this out of here, because you do have a new one of these, or you can just reuse the old one, whatever. And then of course you gotta take off the plug from the AC compressor, which is down here. You just kind of squeeze the back like this and then pull. Just get this whole thing up out of your way. Gotta take the tension off the belt once I get all that stuff off. This is actually a Serpentine belt tool made by Mako. Makes it much easier. It's a, see, I got it right down there on that hex tension adjuster. You gotta pull towards you to take the tension off the belt. See, once I pull this way, the tension comes off. I'm gonna pull my phone down for a second. Get the belt off. You just pull it off these pulleys right here. Once you get it off the pulley like that, you can kind of just take the tension back off. It's pretty much off now. So I get it out of your way. We're taking off the mounting bolts. First one I see is this one right here. It's a 14mm. See, it goes straight through. It's got a nut on the backside, but you should be able to just loosen it. I'm gonna put my ratchet the right way. Don't forget, guys, righty tighty, lefty loosey. Loose. Should be able to get it by hand. Careful when you get it by hand though, because that nut looks like it'll fall. See, I'm loosening it by hand here, but that nut, you can see it's moving in and out. That'll fall right down, so you don't lose it. Pay attention. See the head of that? How the actual outline or the cutout on the alternator is a hexagon shape as well, so it actually holds that nut in place. So that is not going anywhere. That's actually only going to fall off through the other side, so it's going to come out this way. So you don't have to worry about it falling. Just pull your bolt out. Around that line, just put it up out of your way. Top bolt right here is out. Like I said, that nut will stay in place. The next thing you got to do is get the bottom bolt out. The actual alternator, this is the top bolt that's already out. I got this bottom one right here that I need to take out as well to get the alternator out. That bottom one is the actual pivot point, the center pivot point where your alternator is mounted and what it pivots off of. But to take off that, before you take that Allen key out, you got to get this 12mm down here. Let's see if I can give you a good picture of it. Down here, if you look, that's actually the pivot point. See that big shock looking thing right there? That's the bottom shock that actually mounts your tensioner. So that's the tensioner right there, and if you look down at that hole, see right there, that Allen key, that's the one you're gonna have to get to after you get the 12mm out off the bottom. So I'm gonna pull that thing off now. Luckily I have this handy dandy ratchet with a pivoting head with a 12mm on it, so I should be able to get right in here without a problem and get that broken free. broken free. Luckily, most of these bolts, they've never been touched before. Once you kind of break them free, I mean, it's hot down here. Luckily, you want to try to do this when the car's cold, but I'm trying to help somebody out in a tight spot, and they're in a rush, and you know, I got other things to do as well. But once you get them broken free, you can pretty much usually get them by hand. So, here's a little tip. This reservoir right here, this is your coolant reservoir for your radiator. This hose right here, it tanks in right here. If you see that slot, literally just grab it and pulls up and out, and you can get that thing out of your way. And you get to this bolt right down here. 12 millimeter that was down at the bottom is out. I have my, that is an 8 millimeter Allen key, is already loose, and I can kind of get it by hand now. You see the tensioner starting to come off. This, like I said, this is the mounting bolt for the bottom of the alternator, so make sure you get that all the way out and get that tensioner out of your way, and you should be able to just kind of pry this thing right out. So the whole reason for getting the tensioner out of your way is because the tensioner blocks another 14 millimeter bolt, which is your lower mounting bolt. Let's see if I can get you in there so you can see it. Right there, see that's the lower mounting bolt, which is that 14. You really couldn't get to that without having to get your tensioner out of your way, so that's why that tensioner is off. Once you get that off, you just get that 14, and once you can break this thing free, obviously pull that all the way out. You see the alternator's already falling out. Once I get that all the way out, it should come right out. It's actually, now that the alternator's tilted out of the way, you can actually see that's that bottom bolt right there. Alternators are out. Obviously compare the two, make sure they're exactly the same. These obviously are. This one's got a heat shield on the old one. I gotta transfer the new one. Just a couple 10 millimeter bolts, take them off, transfer it onto that one. Here's the reason for having to take that tensioner out. Here's your tensioner, and it goes mounted right there with that Allen key that goes through here. So you see that the bolt where the alternator goes, which is that hole right there, is completely blocked by this. That's why you have to take your tensioner out. I'm about to put that new alternator in. I just wanted to show you guys, that was that bolt for that top one. You see how that thing won't fall out. It's actually holding with that keeper right there. So this should be good. First bolt I have to go back in is going to be this bottom one right here. This is the last one I took out. It's basically a reverse procedure of the installation, but I'm going to go through it really quick. It should be pretty straightforward. Putting the alternator back in, that first bolt on the bottom, that 14, you can have a lot of clearance by kind of leaning this out of your way to get to it first, but you can't tighten it all the way down because this does need to pivot back into place. So you can get the bolt most of the way in, but don't tighten it down all the way because you have to pivot this whole alternator this way to line up these bolts with this one right here. I got that bolt on the bottom snugged up enough to where it still doesn't really move, but I can still pivot it in and out. So I'm going to slide that forward, put that top bolt in. After you put that top bolt in, don't forget to tighten that bottom one back up too. Both mounting bolts for the alternator are tight, so that thing is secure and not going anywhere. Now it's time to put this one back in. First thing you want to do is line it up, and we're going to put that Allen key back in there. This was a little tight to get out of there, but you can squeeze it back in there. Kind of snuck the tensioner back in the same way I took it out, just right through here above this AC line, but under the alternator you can kind of sneak everything right back in there and have it sitting in place right now with the bolt kind of just hanging there. I'm about to tighten it up. 8 mil. You can't see at all what I'm doing, but I'm tightening that 8 mil up, just snugging it all the way in by hand first. Once it's snugged down, and obviously as you're tightening it, make sure that that 12 mil you see down there on the bottom is also kind of just sitting in place. You see it moving, but that's where that 12 mil goes. So make sure that that's hanging right in front of the hole where it's got to go. I just hand tightened that Allen key. See my tool still sitting on there, the 8 mil tool, or the Allen key. I'm gonna line my bottom. I don't know if I can get it in there so you can see it, but I'm gonna line my bottom bolt up back on that hole. See, you can kind of see it better this way. tightening up my bottom 12mm first from the tensioner. Tighten back up your Allen key on your tensioner. Mind you guys, this stuff doesn't have to be like, you know, don't go He-Man on it. They may have to come off again one day, so and you don't want to strip any bolts, so, you know, I'm sure there's a torque spec. You guys can look it up if you want. I've been doing this a long time. I can kind of tell how tight bolts are supposed to go before you kind of get crazy with them. But keep it in mind, you don't want to break these things. If you're a do-it-yourselfer at home and this is kind of your first time tackling, you're trying to save a couple bucks. So don't go Hulk on these bolts. Snug them down where they're secure, and that's good enough. And if it's hot outside, don't forget to hydrate. Belt was always a fun one to try to pry back up into place, but if you I got along one of these hooks kind of going through the back, I was able to fish it back up and get it back onto the crankshaft pulley. That was part of the toughest part. You see there's not much clearance anywhere in here, and without literally starting to take all the wheel and fender and mud guard off, it's kind of hard to get to the bottom of that belt. So with one of those long hooks, I was able to get to it and get it mounted back on the crank. Once it lines up on that one, you can kind of just pull the tension up on your AC compressor pulley and line it up on here, and both of them will kind of straighten out and line up, which mine are straightened out now. And I already have it around the water pump. Kind of hard to see, sorry, the lighting's pretty bad, it's sunny right now. I already got it around the water pump, so it goes from crankshaft forward, under and around and back to the back of the water pump, and then up over the tensioner, and I also have it around the AC compressor right now as well. So the last thing I have to put on is actually the alternator, but I'm going to put my tensioner tool on there because you obviously can't get it on it right now because there's tension on it. So got my belt tensioner tool in place here. I got all my pulleys lined up, so I just want to pull on this belt and keep tension on it so that it stays lined up on all of my pulleys. I'm going to come back around. You see it won't go on the alternator yet, it's too tight, but I got my tool on here. I'm going to pull, keep tension on the belt and pull back. And it'll pop on. And the belt's on. This is that little clip that I told you the alternator already comes with one, so I'm going to use a new one on the alternator just because it's shinier. These are pretty easy to take off. See this little tab right here. If you have one of these, or just a pair of pliers, you just want to squeeze in these two tabs right here. Once you get them squeezed in, it pops right out. Put your holder back on. Put my little holder in my new hole there. Don't forget to plug your AC compressor back in, because if not, you will not have AC. Just kind of push it forward, and also plug the alternator plug back in. That is secure. I'm going to put this bad boy on right now, and after we put that on, obviously the last thing is don't forget to reconnect your negative battery cable. You see that really small bolt is the one that came with the new alternator, and that's the one off the old one. I'm going to use the bolt off the old one just because you can see it's a much better nut, and I'm obviously going to use that washer as well, but just a heads up. Last but not least, don't forget to put your negative battery cable back on. If not, you ain't got no power. Secure. All done. Good job.